I feel like we're at this point where we're like this crab in between shells. Like we know one shell is not right for us anymore, but we're also not quite sure what the next shell is. We just kind of have these feelings of what doesn't feel right anymore, and we have these pulls towards what does feel right. Hello and welcome back to the Deep Rooted Self-Love Podcast. I'm Nora. I'm a hypnotherapy practitioner, self-love coach, and a mother. This is a space for exploring how the relationship we have with ourselves shapes every part of our lives, from the way we love, connect, and parent to how we show up in our friendships, family, and even our work and dreams. With this podcast, I hope to support you in building deep-rooted self-love, taking up space, and live a life and relationships that truly feel aligned with who you are. Today, I want to speak about something that has been coming up a lot for a lot of my clients, for a lot of my friends, and for myself as well. I have been making some big shifts in my life, and today I want to speak about when one chapter ends and you just don't know yet what is next. And you feel that one chapter is ending, but you just don't know what is to come next. And that's what I've been hearing a lot around me and in my community, and of just people like having had these like big shifts in their life last year. Like people talk about the year of the snake, right? I think the Chinese year of the snake, of like a lot of shedding and just stuff shedding. And when I look at last year, I can agree with that actually so much. There was so much shedding, and through motherhood, if you've listened to my last podcast episode on the need for replenishment as a mother, you can probably tell from that there has been so many shifts for me through motherhood, and a big part of this chapter has been owning that and owning my growth in that and owning my redirection of focus in that. And I think this is what a lot of people experience in their own way, whether that is they're moving from the cities into the countryside like we did, or that they want to just like journal more by hand, or that they enjoy cooking more and like stuff inside the house or in the garden, or that they just enjoy meeting up with their friends in person more rather than talking on the phone or through WhatsApp, or reading physical books rather than reading on their phone. I know for myself, I don't watch a lot of TV right now. I go through phases where I'll watch like one show, but then I'll not really watch anything anymore. And I deleted Instagram off of my phone the other day, and not in a way of like, oh, I need to protect myself from Instagram. I think I was on Instagram on average 4 or 6 minutes a day. And I was like, why do I even have this anymore? Like, this doesn't bring me any joy right now. And even I used to be someone who loves making long voice messages with my friends, and it's just always in this constant contact with my friends. And I might go back to that at some point, but right now I'm really feeling like I'm just not enjoying that so much. So I have these 20-minute voice messages, or sometimes 40-minute voice messages from multiple people waiting there, and I just don't feel like doing it, because I just feel like being in the now and listening to the birds and seeing the trees and just sitting here. And I mean, today I'm recording this podcast with camera because I'm trying it out. I'm just trying multiple different things with this podcast. But I noticed I also really just enjoy sitting here in my office with my microphone and my tea and nothing else, and just having that purity of the moment, of no overstimulation. And what I noticed with that movement coming is that a lot of people are rethinking their careers and rethinking their purpose. And a lot of people want a job that is more purposeful to them. And if you think about it, most people spend 40 hours a week on their job. And if that job doesn't fulfill them, it's a lot of time doing something that doesn't fulfill you. I mean, think of me. I'm already deleting Instagram just by 6 minutes that I spend on it every day, and I don't feel like it's valuable, purposeful. And I also think a lot of people went through a lot of rock bottoms last year. So again, like, people I know in my community, people have gone through divorces, big breakups, even if you weren't officially together with that person, but maybe you had a situationship and it was on off, and now it's finally off, and you've just had that shedding of that relationship and all the self-worth that you tied to that relationship, and everything kind of crumbled down and you had to find your new ways. Or for me, motherhood, the sleep deprivation. So again, just lots of shedding. And I feel like we're at this point where we're like this crab in between shells. Like, we know one shell is not right for us anymore, but we're also not quite sure what the next shell is. We just kind of have these feelings of what doesn't feel right anymore, and we have these pulls towards what does feel right. Like, I have a client who's moving to I think it's Spain, to the Spanish countryside. And I have another former client who is taking a whole year off to go to Asia. And that doesn't mean that that is the end location, but that is just the pull that people are feeling. And in that, I think it's really a good idea to look at your human design. For example, I'm a manifesting generator. And as a manifesting generator, for me, it's super important to follow my excitement. And and also, though, as a manifesting generator, you go through the waves of emotions. And that's something that have only learned over the last couple of months, truly, is to go through the waves and feel the ups and downs. And then when you come to this point of peace and clarity, that's when you know the right decision is being made. And I can maybe share one decision that I have made. I'm not going to go into it in too detail because I think it still needs integrating. But I sat in the car the other day. I brought my mom to the airport and I drove back through the English countryside, and I just had this moment of, I'm going to stop working. I'm going to stop my client work entirely. I'm going to just pause on my self-love client coaching work. And I was sitting in the car and I started tearing, like I started having tears of just like freedom in a way. And like it was really it was like delight. I don't know, I can't really explain it. It was an interesting moment of like, yeah, just feeling like the tears of clarity. That's the best how I can describe it. And it just felt like the right decision. And this is something that's been coming over the last months, maybe over the last more than a year. And again, I'm not going to go into too much detail now because I think it needs a bit of integration. I don't want to say things that I might want to take back later because they're not true or whatever. I think that's the manifesting generator thing of like going through the waves of emotions. But what I do know is true. That is, I'm going to stop client work for now. And it feels so good. And someone that I think is a really cool person to have on my podcast reach out to me right after that, wanting to speak on my podcast. And I was like, yeah, that is that alignment, and that is that following my excitement, because I'm still going to do this podcast because that feels so exciting for me. So going back to human design, figure out what is your strategy and what is your authority. That's really, really helpful. You can get that for free and then just ask ChatGPT if you want and explain it to you, because it's different for every person. But for me and for most for the other generators, it is so important to distinguish between excitement and frustration. And also, if you're listening to this and you're a human design expert, reach out to me because I would love to have you on my podcast. Yeah, but those are the shifts that I am seeing. And today I want to just like get into that a bit deeper and just give you courage and give you validation for what you're feeling and helping you figure out what are the next steps without putting pressure on you. And another thing that I'm seeing is this soft girl era that is coming up in a lot of people's lives, and people setting boundaries at work, asking for help, prioritizing rest without guilt. I see people wanting different relationships and moving from having that toxic passion to desiring true intimacy and partnership. And again, I think that comes a lot from the breakdowns that happened in the last year, the divorces, the breakups, the hardship, because oftentimes the easiest way for us to learn and shift and evolve is to really run into the fire and to really burn ourselves so we really know what's not right for us anymore. And then I know just people just in general meeting themselves more authentically, being more honest with what they want, being more honest with their feelings is another one that I really feel what that I really see in a lot of people is just honoring their feelings and their sensitivity. And when I say people, I mean women in particular, because that's the people that I work with, or that I used to work with. And just, empowering that feminine nature, that softness, that intuition, that creativity, and really leaving this achievement-oriented society behind. I think that is like such a big one. And I'm so curious where our society is going to go with that. And of course, this could be just my little bubble, but even if there's multiple little bubbles that are going away from achievement, and to authentic living, and to analog living, and to connecting back with their roots and their nature and cyclical living, I think that's already going to make such a difference in our world. And then, people choosing or looking for true purpose. I think that already is a big difference. I think people used to not even look for purpose. People used to look for just constant striving and constant just achievement. I know for myself, what is the next achievement that I can get? How many followers can I get? How much money can I make every year to make myself feel valuable? How much way back, what partner can I date to make myself feel valuable? At best, the one that doesn't want to date anyone but only wants to date me, and so on and so forth. And I think so much is moving away from that and just moving to what is my true calling in my heart in this moment in time, and what is my purpose. And I think I also want to make a disclaimer, like, not necessarily your purpose for your entire life. I mean, I think a big purpose of my life was working with the women that I worked with. I'm so glad I still have some of them reach out to me and say, like, I'm still harvesting the fruit from our work together every day. Like, I'm so grateful that we did this work together. So my work is still, going on, perpetuating on or whatever, but it's just come to an end. And now a different purpose is happening for me right now. Again, I also don't know exactly what it is yet, but I know one of my biggest purposes right now is just being a mother to my child and being there and learning and growing through being there. But also really doing this podcast and enjoying that and not knowing where that's going to go. And that's what I really want to talk about. That's what I really want to hit home, of just following what excites you, or following what gives you that satisfaction, and trusting that. And even if it's small steps, right? Like, even with this podcast, I could make 2 podcast episodes every week. I could write more newsletters. I could promote the podcast more. I could invite more speakers. And right now, though, with prioritizing motherhood, that's not going to be how it's going to be. But I'm still trusting that my excitement is in motherhood, in being here, in being there for my baby, and in supporting my husband also, ultimately, to support our family, but also doing the podcast in the time that I have, even if it's limited, and seeing what comes of that. And part of that is exactly, you don't need to have it all figured out today. I don't have it all figured out today. I have made this decision for myself, which already is a lot of having figured it out. But I went through months of trial and error. Okay, how many clients can I work with to feel good? Is this too much? Is this too little? How can I still feel good with how much money I'm earning? And I was really going through the waves. And I think it's just so important to just stay connected to how you're feeling about your choices, about your way of living, and just pivoting from that, using your feelings as a compass of when things feel right and when things don't feel right. And if they don't feel right, allow yourself to pivot. And maybe you can take a moment and just ask yourself where you already feel clarity right now. Maybe there are certain relationships that don't serve you anymore. Maybe it's eating habits that don't serve you anymore. Maybe it's the way you want to furnish your apartment. Like, that's something that came to me when I was preparing this podcast episode. Like, maybe you are feeling the shift that you don't want to live in the city anymore. And part of it is just getting rid of things of your apartment. I know that was the case for my husband before we moved here. He just like started purging in our apartment in Berlin and just throwing so much stuff away. And a friend of mine who's still in Berlin right now feels the same way. She's just like, I'm just getting rid of stuff because I just feel that a move is coming. And when the move is coming, it's going to be easier because it's already going to be cleansed of the stagnant energy, of the stagnant stuff that I don't need in my life anymore. And just allowing yourself to follow those small moments. And maybe it's also setting boundaries with colleagues, right? Maybe you are feeling like you are in a toxic work environment, and part of it is just starting to stand up for yourself and saying no to what drains you, saying no where you feel someone oversteps, so saying no to where you feel small. And just following those small moments of your intuition guiding you and ultimately leading to a more aligned path. And I think it's just so important to just trust those little moments of alignment, because it starts with those small moments of alignment. Only when you allow yourself to do those small moments of alignment, you can do those big shifts. And I think it's just so important to follow that. And then another example that I also did and that I can highly recommend: if you feel like an old chapter is ending and a new one is starting, do an ultimate purge. So the way I just explained it with like maybe your house, do a purge with the people you have in your life. Do a purge with people you follow. I am currently, I think, only following 20 people on Instagram. I unfollowed everyone, not necessarily people that I don't like. I unfollowed a lot of my friends, so if you're listening to this, sorry I unfollowed you probably, but just because I just didn't want to be bombarded on Instagram with all these different information and photos and videos that weren't really aligned with the person that I'm becoming right now, and that kind of kept me in old ways. Or like, for example, I would unfollow people who have similar businesses as me because I just didn't want to compare what they did to what I'm doing anymore, because I'm just feeling this really strong calling to, instead of consume, to turn everything down and to connect with nature, connect with my true reality, and see what evolves from that, and to go from consuming to creating ultimately. Because I think when you're constantly just consuming, all you do is replicate what you see, or you just consume. But if you give yourself that space, I think you can really see what comes from your heart and from your soul, and that I think is a really great exercise as well to do. So do some crazy purge, whatever area that is in. And then I want to touch on the fear that comes with outgrowing the old. And I think I have, because I've come now to this clarity with myself, I've really been able to leave that fear behind. But I know when I was going through the ups and downs of how will I work, how will I mother, how will I make money, there were a lot of fears of, will I lose my status? Will I lose my independence? Will I lose my financial security? Will I not be understood by people in my life whose opinion I care about? And I think it's just so important to notice those fears and let them be there and work through them though as well. I have worked through a lot of them through shadow work and inner child healing. Even though I don't work with people one-on-one anymore, you can still join my membership where I have all my recorded hypnosis. So if you want to do some of that work, you can do that in there. But other fears that people have are, is my partner going to be able to grow with me, or am I outgrowing my partner? Will I not be chosen if I don't overachieve? Will I become irrelevant? Also a really big one. And what is if I'm wrong? I think that's a big one as well. What is if this intuitive instinct that I have to changing my life upside down, what is if I'm just wrong? What is if this is not good for me? And then there's an even quieter fear, is who am I without this part of my life? Who am I without this job? Who am I without living in Berlin or in London or wherever you're living and where you feel like it actually doesn't align anymore. Who am I without my toxic relationships? Who am I without my fears? Who am I without my wounds? And that, I think, is a big part as well of like, because we're in such an achievement-oriented society, and because it teaches us that our value is tied to our performance, when we stop performing and we feel called to slow down and we feel called to soften, we feel called to pivot, it can be really scary because we're almost risking our place in society. And that is what is our biggest fear, right? It's not fitting in, because if you look at it primarily, if you don't belong to your tribe anymore, you're on your own, right? You're unsafe and you're ultimately gonna die unless you find a new tribe. And that, I really think, is the fear that comes up for a lot of us when these big shifts happen. I think it's really this primal fear of just not fitting into the tribe that keeps you safe, and not fitting into the old paradigms that kept you safe, and the old ways of living, the old ways of being. And I think it's just so important to remind yourself of your safety, and also make certain, put certain things in place to make yourself feel safe. For example, starting a savings account where you have money for when you do leave your job, when you do start that business, when you do move somewhere else. And even with us, like moving to the English countryside, that was also a big step. I remember for Nico as well, most of his job comes from Berlin, or used to come from Berlin, and he wanted to expand to England and wanted to expand to London. And there's also some insecurity or some fears coming up around that of like, will I still get work around here? And it's all coming into place, and it's all working out as it always does when we dare to make those steps in alignment. But I think it's just important to honor that, and honor that you are becoming a new version of yourself, and that you can grieve that old version of you, and that is totally fine, and that it still is not who you are anymore, and that it just means that you're evolving. And there was one thing that I heard on a podcast the other day that I really, really loved, something that Jenna Zoe said. I think that's how you say her name. She's a human design expert or human design person. I don't even know. The word expert, I'm not a fan of it anymore, really. Like, who's even an expert of anything at this point? But she knows a lot about human design. And she said something. She was like, I'm just paraphrasing it. I don't know exactly how she said it, but she said something of like, the people who are able to trust their heart and their intuition rather than their fears are going to be the ones that are going to be benefiting in the future from doing that, because our whole paradigm is shifting. Everything's shifting, apparently, according to human design, until 2027. And the people who are really allowing themselves to trust their desires to be their roadmap and to let go of the things that don't feel aligned anymore are going to be the ones winning in this whole situation. Because not everyone can do it, and we're all going to shift in that direction anyway. Apparently, and I also believe it, we're all gonna change into a softer way of living eventually, but the ones that can really trust their intuition when it's calling for them are gonna be the ones that are really gonna benefit from it. Like, if you look at Instagram, like 15, 20 years ago, businesses weren't promoting on Instagram. Businesses had billboards, had, I don't know, magazine, whatever, and it was really a dare, and it was really stepping through a fear of being like, I'm going to invest my money into Instagram. I'm going to put myself out there. It's not like today where everyone puts themselves out on Instagram and everyone has ChatGPT to give them posts to post or whatever. It was much more vulnerable. And those were the people that really ended up growing big on social media, that really ended up making a lot of money and so on and so forth, because they were one of the first ones, and they were the ones that trusted their heart, their intuition to do the thing that called out for them. And I think that's really what I'm trying to say, or what I'm trying to requote, that if you learn to trust your desires and you let them be your roadmap, you're going to get to your destination so much quicker than when you have your fears hold you back and keeping you at an old sinking ship that isn't going to serve you any longer. And then, because this is always a hot topic, is when can you trust your intuition, and how can you distinguish your intuition from your fear? And I want to give you some simple practices to connect with your intuition. So my experience is your intuition just feels calm and like a calm knowing. And again, that is my human design. You should look up your authority and your strategy on human design. That's going to be really helpful. But I think for most people, intuition really feels calm, and it's not this nervousness, and it doesn't feel forced. It just feels like this calm knowing. Your intuition speaks quietly, so I think that's a really important part. If you're just like hustling and all you do is just be in your head and you're just rushing through life, your intuition is probably not going to speak to you. My moments where I had my intuition most clear in my life were moments where I was on a hike, where I was on a long drive through the countryside, like in this case. Not even like in a meditation. I mean, I had in meditations, I had clarity, but like these really massive shifts were really for me always when I was somehow in nature. And then just allowing yourself to slow down is essential for hearing what is true for you. But also, whilst slowing down, also listening how the universe is speaking to you, and not just through some like random downloads, but actually just through the people you meet, the people who inspire you, the things that you see. Or if you did do an Instagram purge, what is it that you actually now start to follow on Instagram? That's what I saw when I like unfollowed so many people. Instagram started showing me new things that were A, fitting to the ones that I was following already, that I still followed, and B, just giving me the opportunity to show Instagram what I like. And that has already shifted a lot in the things that I used to consume. I mean, now I'm not really on Instagram. Might change in the next weeks, but right now that's the phase that I'm going through. So seeing what inspires you in life, because I think that inspiration is just such a great way of the universe speaking to you and your intuition coming through, and honoring that, and honoring what feels like contraction and honoring what feels like expansion. And just going back to what is if I let my desires be my roadmap. And I think that's just such a beautiful way of just trusting your desires and stepping through those fears. And then just some ending thoughts. I hope that out of this, you can give yourself the permission to not know what's next. That is totally fine. It is already such a big step knowing what seems like it's not for you anymore. And that doesn't mean you have to leave that relationship today. That doesn't mean that you have to leave that job tomorrow. That doesn't mean that you have to pack all your stuff and move at the beginning of the next month. But even noticing that it doesn't feel aligned anymore is already a big step to take, and just trusting that and just being open to that. I think if you allow yourself to admit that to you, that something doesn't feel aligned, the voice is only going to become louder and give you more and more ways of following what the right aligned path is for you. And then give yourself the permission to feel deeply as part of that soft girl era of just feeling your feelings, doing body scans, just 5 minutes every day, feeling into your body. Where do you feel contraction? Where do you feel openness? With who or in what moments, places do you feel contraction and openness? Then also allow yourself the permission to change your mind. I think that's such an important one, especially if you're a manifesting generator like me. I would go through highs of like, I'm going to like work with so and so many clients. I'm going to have my best year yet, to I don't want to work with anyone. I just want to be a mom. To I'm going to do a podcast episode every month. I'm going to do a podcast episode every 2 weeks, etc., etc. And I was just going through the absolute waves. At some point, I raised my prices because I was like, okay, if I raise my prices, maybe then client work will feel more aligned. still didn't feel more aligned. So I'm just sharing this because I really went through so many waves of that, and that is totally fine. That is not you obsessing about crazy things. That is just you going through the waves of life and letting life and the universe, the world, speak to you and giving you feedback on every step that you take. And then trusting and giving yourself permission to trust what you know inside, even when your fears are there. Lastly, as well, you can have your knowing and you can honor your knowing and see it and still have fears with it. They can coexist, and that is fine. And with every step that you take, your fears may become smaller, your fears may become quieter, and your intuition becomes louder and your trust becomes bigger. And with those fears, as I said earlier, it does help to do some work with a coach, a therapist, maybe a good friend that can help you work through them. And also, last thing is find expanders, and that's part of the Instagram or social media part that I told you about. If you feeling like you're going away from that hustle mindset and from that achievement-based mindset, maybe you start following people who are living a more softer lifestyle, who are doing more creative jobs, who feel more fulfilled in the way they do their life. And maybe Instagram's not even the right place for that. Maybe it's podcasts like this one, or maybe it's a different podcast, maybe it's YouTube, more deeper channels where you really can get to know other people and find those expanders that will help you on the way. Maybe after this episode, you can make a little list and write down where you already feel clarity in your life and how you can honor that. And then also make a list of where you're not feeling clear yet, maybe what fears are coming up, and just to honor where you're at, because that's already a huge step. And even you noticing that something's shifting is already one step in the right direction. All right, I'm sending you so much love, and I hope you have a great weekend when you're listening to this. And as always, if you like this episode, you can give me a 5-star review if you haven't done so. Wherever you're listening to this, you can reach out to me. And if you feel like you have a friend who needs to listen to this podcast episode, feel free to send it to them. Sending you so much love and speaking to you next Friday.